If you're watching this video, I assume you already understand the basics of color theory. If not, I recommend checking out my previous video. It gives a good sense of the fundamentals, which we'll go more in depth with in this video, where we'll cover some tips to improve our color usage. In my last video, I briefly mentioned saturation and value, but it should be noted that changing these two values may be the most important thing you can do in your designs. When we take one of our color harmonies, at face value it can look pretty ugly at times, but by changing the values we can get something much more memorable. Then we can improve our palette even further by adding our neutrals. But before I get ahead of myself, let me explain the 60-30-10 rule. You'll hear about this rule quite often once you begin researching color theory. It states that in your art and designs, one should use a ratio of 60% base color, 30% neutral colors, and 10% accents. The base colors are the colors in the scene that pop, accentuated by the neutrals, neutrals being the supporting colors for the scene. Neutrals are subdued, unsaturated colors that can be bright, dark, warm, or cool, and provide a foundation for the base and accent colors to thrive on. Finally, the accent colors are the non-dominant colors found in your chosen color harmony. Now this should go without saying, but this rule is not going to apply to all situations. A vast amount of art out there doesn't use any neutrals at all, and for good reason. You can still create great art and designs without using the 60-30-10 rule. Just make sure it fits with what you're trying to do. For example, a website made completely of high saturated colors can be very harsh on the eyes, and create an atmosphere that deters some visitors. Before we put our new skills to use and create a palette, there are a few more things we should cover. First is that we don't always need or want saturation. If we'd like to create a sense of calmness, saturation is one thing we probably don't want. This is why clothing for babies uses pastels and subdued, low saturation colors. Since there's little contrast and no colors that pop, it creates a soothing combination. Secondly is how to properly capture emotions in our designs. In my last video, I touched on what emotions are commonly associated with certain colors. To evoke these emotions more effectively, we can use a couple different formulas. To more strongly convey a feeling, use dark colors in combination with highly saturated colors. And to convey a softer feeling, use bright and desaturated colors. Also, weaker contrast and saturation make a feeling seem more calm, while high contrast and saturation create more excitement. Finally, it is important to consider contrast while coloring, as it can make or break a design, depending on the situation. If you have any text in your design, make sure you have high enough contrast between the text and the color behind it. By changing the amount of contrast between the different pieces of text, you can emphasize certain words. Also, having high contrast will help people with color blindness, as they'll be able to see the difference between the colors. This will give them a better understanding of what the design is trying to do, since they can see the differences in contrast, just not the differences between some hues. Now, let's try constructing a color palette. First, let's choose a color harmony. I'll go with split complementary. For my dominant color, I'll use shades of green. My secondary and accent colors will be orange and blue respectively, and my neutral will be white. You don't always need multiple neutrals. Let's take a look at how we could use this palette in different situations. If we use it on furniture, we'll get great results. Same goes for if we're trying to color a website, and just as well on regular art pieces. If you'd like more advice on how to make color schemes, I recommend you check out this video. I've put a link to it up in the card in the corner. It goes more in detail of how to create and then apply color schemes. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and your knowledge of color theory and usage has broadened.